Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
Should be good. And what's up, Doom Nation, and welcome back. You were listening to the Two Doom Men podcast. As always, it's Skaggs and yours truly, the captain. And we have a very special guest today. Skaggs, why don't you introduce our good friend here?
Mr. Jose Vega is back, and he's got a lot of interesting stuff to talk with us about. Sorry about the little wait there. Yeah, we got to wait the 2 minutes for the intro to start and build up the hype on Twitter so everybody can tune in. But Jose, I'm happy to have you here, man. I am excited.
Yes, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah,
not as bad as I am.
Yeah, man. Last time we had you on, we talked about AOC and some of the current going on, man. But let's just start with the news you got going on and what we're excited about.
Yeah, your news and where can everybody find you?
Sure, yeah. A couple days ago, I announced my run for Congress, and I launched it on the Jimmy Dore show. I am running in New York 15. That's Richie Torres' district, colloquially known as the South Bronx. And I'm running as an independent. I'm not running as a Democrat. I'm not running as a Republican. I am running as an independent, unaffiliated.
Interesting. Okay, so I was going to ask you because I was looking on your website and it didn't really cite what you're running as. Or at least I didn't see it. So that's interesting. So you don't have to really primary challenge Richie. You're just running head-to-head straight up against him.
Straight to November, although, I will need your guys' help come April.
Definitely.
Because I gotta get people to sign my petition. I need 7,000 signatures to get on the ballot here in New York, right? 7,000 signatures, and the problem is you only get 6 weeks to get those signatures. It's like absurd, but
we got a couple of people in New York that we could probably reach out to.
Yeah. We should reach out
to get a couple of signatures.
I'll reach out to him, but you should reach out to Larry Sharp also. He ran for governor as the Libertarian, so he has experience in this area in New York specifically.
I know Larry Sharp. He ran for governor, I think, in 2022 or so.
Yep,
he did.
Yeah. He come to Diane's event. He's a great guy.
We love him.
Yeah. We well, the thing is, we have experience with this because we put Diane Sayre on the ballot as an independent. She was the only one to do it. I mean, the Green Party couldn't do it, Libertarians couldn't do it, but we did it, and it was hard. It was grueling. I was out every day from 6 a.m. till about 5 p.m. every day. Like I gave up my job, everything, just to get Diane on the ballot, and now we got to do it again, this time for me and Diane. So it's gonna be wild.
Yeah, man. It people don't realize that it is a tremendous investment to run for office, especially if you're serious about it and you want to win.
And you're not part of the establishment. Hold on, wait. Before we start losing people, where can everybody find you? Yeah. Get this important information out now, and once again at the end of the show.
VoteVega.nyc. VoteVega.nyc. This is how much I am starting my campaign with. This is about a couple quarters. That's how much.
75 cents.
I want to thank everybody who's watching right now who has already donated. You are everything to me. You are the best. If you haven't received a personal call from me yet, thanking you for your donation, you will very soon. So thank you very much again. And please continue to support me, continue to donate. And most importantly, intervene, man. You got to do something. That's even more important. So
definitely, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of like we talked about last time, one of the things that how I came to find you was when you would call out these politicians at when they were giving these speeches, and we had talked about last time when you had called out Jamal Bowman, and I think Richie Torres was there as well. And
that was Hakeem Jeffries. That was
Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, yes, the two.
I have called out Richie Torres though. That one was funny too.
Yeah, and man, just one of the things, and this is going to be a theme of this episode, one of the things I noticed from, when you've done this is these people in charge, they don't know shit about fuck. They are so dumb. Me, you, Chris could sit here and we could probably talk for 3-4 hours about the history about the war in Ukraine. But if you bring it up to any of these guys, I guarantee you they can't hold, they can't hold a candle to us. And when you look at, we'll get a little bit into Richie Torres' website here and whatnot. It seems like they know a lot. It seems like they know a lot. And I'm going to read a little bit later when we get into the foreign policy stuff. But I'm really excited for you, man, and I'm really pulling for you. And any way we can
Yeah,
help,
we're happy for you.
we're not going to softball you here though either. We're gonna ask you some
Oh,
difficult
I don't want
questions.
to. I gotta go. I got something.
So let's start here, man. Let's put aside the ballot petition challenge. That's a challenge for any independent candidate. We're familiar with that with the Libertarian Party. I think there's a challenge in the Bronx specifically to win. I feel people are just apathetic to everything going on, and perhaps things have changed, right? But I'll give you an example. A friend of ours, Justin, he lives in Castle Hill in the Bronx, and every time he comes up and we do a podcast with him, and we do like a fucked up Friday, and we're just kind of hanging out, we'll usually ask him a political question, be like, "Hey, what do you think about like what's going on in Ukraine?" And he'll be like, "I don't know, man. I'm not like paying attention.
Where is that?
Where is that? You know?" And it seems to be a theme in the Bronx. I even remember the one of the more recent campaign cycles where Tina Forte ran against AOC. Now, say whatever you want about Tina Forte, but I remember looking at the numbers, and I think if every registered Republican in the Bronx had actually went and voted for her, she would have.
And there's a couple of them.
She would have actually won and beat AOC because the turnout was so low across the board for everyone. You just need to get people to turn out. So my first question would be to you: how can we get people in the city to actually get, for lack of a better term, wake up and get involved in the process and want to see some change in the Bronx specifically?
Okay, are we on YouTube or
No, we're on Twitter
Like,
only right now. We'll be on YouTube and whatnot later. So we're starting on Twitter.
There's election fraud. There is election fraud. Okay, the vote. So let me be serious for a second here. This is the other thing too. Like, I have to transition now as somebody who's running for Congress. I have to start acting as if I were in the Congress, and I don't look very candidatorial right now.
Authenticity sells you, man.
We come on here with
Always.
hoodies and hats every week.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. Yeah.
I got two different camps. People telling me no, they like the whole rustic, blue collar kind of authentic look, and other people are like, you got to get a suit.
Hey, listen, if
Fetterman.
John Fetterman can fucking win, you running around in a black t-shirt ain't a problem.
Fetterman not only won, but he changed the dress code policy in Congress now, basically.
And then he started dressing up after they changed it.
So never say never. Yeah, right.
That's power. That's power right there. When you can change the dress policy in government, that is power.
Nancy Pelosi shows up with Crocs,
Look, well, John, this is the thing. I can't insult my possible future colleagues. Maybe I can. We'll see.
Should.
I don't know. So Donald Trump became president that way by insulting his way to the office. It's the first time.
I have to be more disciplined here. No, look. People don't believe that their vote means anything anymore, and I don't blame them. Like, let's assume that people don't even think there is such a thing as voter fraud, and that the election, and let's just say they think the elections are honest, right? They look around the Bronx or New York City or the country or the world, let's say somebody's been around for 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, 30 years, and they say, well, what has electoral politics actually done for me, for my community, for my country, for my state, for the world? It's just made it a shithole. It's just made it a mess. Yes, I agree with you, right? And I'm supposed to go tell that person, but you still got to go to the ballot box. Now, if I wasn't running, I would say maybe don't go to the ballot box. But now, listen, one of the reasons I decided to run is because I was thinking about what it would look like come November when I go into that ballot box and I have to pick between presidential candidates that none of them I like. Maybe we could argue about that a little bit later, but none of the presidential candidates I really like. I certainly don't like Richie Torres, and he's running unopposed right now. I mean, well, apart from me now, right? But in this hypothetical scenario where I'm in the ballot box, you're telling me I have to, strip myself of my dignity and be forced to only choose this one guy who's a genocide denier?
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. If I can elect myself, then so be it. If nobody else wants to vote for me, then so be it. But I am not going to strip myself of that dignity. and have only one choice. And so that's why I'm electing myself. Now, trying to convince other people to go to the ballot box, I think people should vote in general, no matter what. People should vote in general, no matter what. And if there's somebody in my district who's not happy with me running, not happy with Richie Torres running, that person should run too. I guess my campaign is centered around giving people hope and giving people a reason to want to care about politics again and care about government again. I know you gentlemen believe in limiting government. I don't. I'm the other way. I think we need a whole hell of a lot more government. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because I'm over here talking about how terrible our government is right now. But the problem is trust. You don't have trust, and we need to actually restore that trust. And I think by actually going out there in the streets like I was out there today, and I had this sign, this great sign. I don't know if it's possible if we can show it or not, but from me being out in Hostos today, and I had this great sign at the top. It said Richie Torres ignores this, and then there was a picture of a building that has collapsed in the Bronx,
I
so that
remember
he
that. That
can
was
fund
recently, right?
this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. December. That's right. And then it says so he can fund this, and then it's a picture of a destroyed building by a missile in Gaza, right? So that there's a congruity there. And when people see that, and I got this experience today, people come up to me and they say, "Yes, I agree with you. This guy has got to go. Yeah, what's going on in Gaza is terrible." That's it. That's the one. Bam. Yeah. So I was out at Hostos today, and I had this image, and people were really attracted to this image in particular. They thought that this was a very strong image, and I had a lot of students coming up to me. I had a lot of older folks coming up to me, younger folks coming up to me, and they were like, "Yeah, like this is exactly the problem." Right now, mind you, people are telling me this in the poorest district in the country. The South Bronx has 30% of its constituency living underneath the poverty line. All right, 1/3 of the people walking around here are living under the poverty line. That's worse than living paycheck to paycheck. People need some kind of government assistance to just live here. Um, and so they actually care about what's going on in Gaza. They actually care about international politics, right? And they recognize that. And so when I tell them, look, I don't know how honest our elections are, they are not. But if you want to help me fight against that corruption, well, then maybe we can start electing some real leaders again. So, I guess that's where I would start. I would say, we got to re-inspire people. By the way to do it is just go and show people an example of what they can believe in again.
Mm-hmm. The Gaza scenario is interesting, and I think there's definitely a lane there for what would you consider yourself exactly? Like if you had to, like I consider myself a libertarian and anarcho-capitalist, right? But what would you consider yourself?
LaRouche. Okay. I'm a LaRouche E.
Okay.
And for the layman, that would more be like Hamiltonian.
Okay.
Because that's what Lynn based his policies on Hamilton economics.
Okay, fair enough. There's a lane and an opportunity, which I've spoken about on the podcast before, where it seems like the Democrats are way out of step with their base on this issue in Israel and Palestine, where most of the base is against the war against Gaza, right? And they're out, like they're active, like they're out in the streets having the ceasefire protests and things like this. And then Biden is there just essentially paying lip service while he's signing all the checks and giving all the support to Israel to carry this out. Now he's tried to change his tune here and there to try to sound more combative, but I'm white pilled by the fact that people see right through it. That's a good thing. That also opens up a avenue for people to run again, like to run to the left of him, you might say, perhaps, on this issue and get people to not support the Democrats on this. Richie Torres, I mean, my God, I know, Cap, we wanted to start with the local stuff, but we're already talking about it, buddy.
So. Oh no, we can do whatever you want to do. It's okay. I mean, it's me. Look, my whole ideology is that things are fixed from the top down. I know people think otherwise. It starts bottom up. I believe top down.
Okay, that's interesting because the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party right now is focused on from the bottom up.
Bottom up,
address the local. But interestingly enough, you're running for a local office in a sense. Yes, Congress, you would have to go to Washington, things like that. But you are trying to participate in the system from the local local avenue. Let's put it that way. But we're talking about this, man. So let's get into it. I kind of want to read this actually because I went on Richie Torres' website and we could get your reaction to it. And we poked around, see things we could talk about here today. So I found this interesting I went to his his issues for Israel, and he has this interesting, like paragraph here. Where he says, "Building a bridge between Israel and the Muslim world is neither a democratic value nor a Republican value. It's an American value. The Abraham Accords are an affirmation of the proof that peace is possible, which must be protected and strengthened," said Rep. Richie Torres. "Today, with the passage of this bill in the House, we are bending the long arc of the Middle East in its proper direction, towards peace and prosperity for all. The timing of this bill's passage could not be more important at this moment. In light of the war between Israel and Hamas, it is more important than ever that we fight to protect Israel's global standing and partnerships. The U.S.-Israel relationship is sacrosanct, and today's vote is further proof of that. The future of the Middle East is neither pro-Israel nor pro-Arab. It is both pro-Israel and pro-Arab. I remain hopeful that the long arc of history will bend toward a new Middle East where the children of Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, can live in peace and prosperity. As Theodore Herzl once said, if we will it, it is no dream. Let us will into reality the Abrahamic dream of Israeli-Arab peace." So just what stood out to me is quoting Theodore
This
Herzl.
is the Abraham Accords, the ones that 2020, right, with Trump, the one that he was able to
Yes.
secure right between the UAE and
Yes.
Israel.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a couple things we could pick apart here. I just thought it was interesting. He's quoting Theodore Herzl, if you guys don't know who Theodore Herzl is, he's like the founder of Zionism, in a sense. The project that eventually led years later to Israel. So, this is.
But I think the
Go ahead.
UAE pulled out their ambassador recently. I think in November or so. Their ambassador to Israel, they pulled them out after the start of the genocide. So that deal's basically dead in the water at this point. Look, I was subjected to a 5-minute excerpt of Richie Torres quoting Martin Luther King Jr. in the light of the Hamas war, because apparently Martin Luther King Jr. would be upset with all the anti-Semitism going on, but he would be okay with bombing 35,000
I'm sure
people.
he would have. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a dream that one day we will bomb those congressmen. I'm a congressman. Anyway, it's I was subjected to that bullshit of speech because he was saying that Martin Luther King Jr. would think that the arc of history would bend towards Israel, blah 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 blah. What you presented me there, I mean, was it a good deal? In hindsight, yeah, sure. It showed like, whoa, there could be some peace in the Middle East, that, hey, Israel is signing with a major Arab country, like, hey, maybe that could be good, but now that bill's just dead in the water. And it also shows, right, that the Abraham Accords didn't really do anything to actually prevent the problem that we have right now, where we are right now. So,
yeah. I've made the point on previous episodes. It's not me who came up with this, with Scott Horton, but he cited how the Abraham Accords kind of led to the attack by Hamas, because they were essentially like buying off the Shiite kings in the area with weapons and money, and buying off their peace with Israel, and then kind of buying it off in a sense to let Israel to kind of like they won't care about what happens to the Palestinians. So now you got to look at that from like the Palestinians and from Hamas's point of view. They had to do something to get everybody to care again about the situation. So in a sense, I know that's kind of like a Trump talking point, which is interesting that Richie Torres would be, citing it, but it didn't actually. It kind of led to the scenario, like you're saying, that we have right now in the region, which is ready to boil over into a major fucking war.
I don't know if
week or two.
You probably did your research. Richie Torres' biggest contributor, I think, is IPAC, at the American Israeli Political Action Committee. That's just where all his money comes from. It comes from the IDF and IPAC.
I didn't, but that doesn't surprise me. So let me ask you the question. This was a question that got asked to RFK. Are you concerned with the level of Israeli influence over American politics?
Yes. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Ask me that again. Ask me it again.
Are you concerned with the level of Israeli influence over American politics?
Well, I can't really. I'm saying I shouldn't do that either.
You saw that. You saw that interview, huh?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, no, Dave Smith did a great job on that interview because, I know that well, actually, let me ask you. I mean, Kennedy, I think he said he was courting the libertarian nomination, right? That's what he said, that he was considering it or something. And Dave Smith was like, I am not going to let that happen, and I will
Mhm.
actively organize against it. What did you guys think?
Oh, I'm a
Being libertarian.
I didn't listen to the episode yet,
So yes,
unfortunately.
the feelers were being put out by the Kennedy camp, definitely, if he could get the Libertarian nomination. I think because it's a quick avenue to actually be on the ballot in all the states, because the Libertarian Party has ballot access for the presidential election in all 50 states. I don't see it being possible, knowing how the Libertarian Party
Is that
works.
true? Except New York. I don't think they don't have it here in New York. They lost ballot status in New
They do.
York.
They might have it for the presidential election, though, not for governorship, but for presidential, I think they've maintained all
Oh,
50
no,
states.
yeah,
I could
no,
be
they
wrong.
have,
I don't know.
like that's why I think they were running Larry Sharp to at least secure him on the ballot so they could
Hmm.
keep their ballot status, because that's what New York State did. They in 2000, I think it was 20 or 18. It was just as Andrew Cuomo was getting kicked out. Yeah, security right because of the right, yes, because Cuomo was getting kicked out. This was after he did the COVID stuff, and then the whole sexual harassment stuff. In New York State, he raised the ballot requirements from 15,000 to 45,000 to be a statewide candidate.
Right.
That's what happened.
Yep.
And that knocked a lot of people's party status off because they couldn't maintain it. The Greens couldn't maintain it, and the Libertarians, I'm pretty sure, couldn't maintain it. So they have to get back on it now this year. So I think that's how it works.
Yeah, there's always this gamesmanship going on in the
Mhm.
background. Same thing happened in
Yeah.
Connecticut here as well, with the COVID
Oh
restrictions.
yeah.
Yeah, similar thing with the COVID restrictions. You had to get signatures, and then we got the signatures, and then there was no one in the office to count the signatures because of COVID, and then the time kind of like they ran out the clock on the process here. But I don't want to get too much into it. I'm dead set against Kennedy running as a libertarian because if he then were to win, he's not a libertarian, and then he'd be a
Yeah.
president, a libertarian president who's not a libertarian, not doing libertarian things, and then people are going to think that's what libertarianism is, and that's a recipe for a disaster. So I don't see it
You
happening.
guys are
Also.
hardcore.
Yeah, I don't see
You
it
guys are
happening
hardcore.
either. Just knowing how the process works, like delegates have to choose who the candidate is, and I don't see knowing probably who's comprised the delegates of right now. I don't see them picking Kennedy over Joshua Smith or Michael Rectenwald or anything like that. So don't see it happening. On top of the fact that all the big name guys are like, no fucking chance. We're gonna make sure that doesn't happen. So don't see it happening.
Okay, go. Well, he's got a big challenge ahead of himself. He's got to get 75,000 signatures, I think, in California, but he's got a bigger window in California. So I'll be interested to see if he can actually pull that off, and if he can pull it off here in New York. He probably could. I have a picture with Kennedy taken back in September. I was kind of on the not kind of I was on the Kennedy train, even though I
Mhm.
disagreed with like 60% of things he was saying, maybe 70% of the things he was saying. I still believed, okay, at least, he might be genuine, he might be honest. And then, well, then the October 7th happened, and then he just like, started saying that the Gazans are pampered and that, we should support Israel to the full extent. And he just fell off the deep end. And I was like, I can't support this,
Yeah,
you know?
I think it started before that when he made a comment about how
His tweet,
I don't know if it was his
his
tweet,
dog
but
whistle tweet.
yeah, I mean that and something about the vaccines, about how he made some sort of reference about how the vaccines target Jews or something, and it got taken out of context. And then after that, he went on the campaign with Rabbi Shmuley, and that guy is just a sociopath, right? So that was like a major red flag for me. And now just I did like him too, or I was entertaining him at the beginning before, as well. Like I could hold my nose on the positions about guns and things like that. In a sense, because he says he's changed his position over time, which happens. I'm not saying like people don't change their position on things, but the Israel Hamas Palestine thing was like a red flag, a real like Achilles heel for me in regards to him. Like I see that and I'm like something's wrong here. This guy is influenceable, definitely, from something behind the scenes, because he had such like logical, well thought out takes, or even on like Ukraine. He understands shit. I'd say he's one of the rare occurrences of people who like understand it as much as probably we do, which is not saying that much, but at least we understand it. But then on this issue, I don't know. It's just weird. It's like it seems like his tongue is tied. Even like you said, you made that little joke before, how long it took to answer that question. That leads me to believe that he knows the right answer, right? He knows the right answer to that question.
His
He just
influence.
couldn't say it, and he had to think about what he was going to say before he said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he well, not to beat dead on the Kennedy campaign, not to beat a dead horse on it, but you know, yeah, him hanging out with Rabbi Shmuley was bad, but the thing that made him attractive to me was that he was quoting his uncle. And now that he's, this speech from American University, 1963, that speech, where Kennedy, JFK says, listen, we're Americans and we find communism abhorrent, but we can relate with the Russians that they just want a better future for their kids. They just want to do what they think is best for, their country. And we can relate on that issue. We all breathe the same air, we share the same planet, and we should find some point of cooperation on that end. This is what Bobby Kennedy was quoting. And I thought, okay, well, if he can have that approach when it comes to other countries, like, yeah, definitely, except Israel and Gaza. No, definitely.
Right.
Israel is wipe off Gaza. Well, he didn't say we should wipe off Gaza off the map, but I don't want to mischaracterize his views either, right? But it just seems to be a kind of like lack of actual, consistency in your principles when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, but you can't say the same thing about Israel and Gaza. So anyway, I'm sorry. We
No, it's
don't.
okay.
I'm running here.
Yeah, you're
not
running.
Kennedy.
Yes, we want to hear about you. I do think me and Chris like to use wars are always a good like litmus test for people. If you see maybe a principled take on a war somewhere, but not a principled take somewhere else, that's always interesting. It kind of raises my eyebrows. What's going on there? One of the we're saying before with the economic stuff, like that's the way I look at you. Like, yeah, we believe in like limited government. Chris, maybe, I don't know, a little bit different than me, but when I look at you, I look at someone who's like, okay, let's put aside the economic differences like me and you probably have. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with like debating economics, but the most important things are like we're anti-war, and we if there's a fucking nuclear war in the next 6 months, who gives a shit what economic model we're following, right? Like we can debate that later once we make sure that we're not at risk of being vaporized, some atomic bomb.
That's why I love Angela McArdle. Angela McArdle is like, I mean, I love her to death. I know she's the chair of the Libertarian Party or the National. I don't really understand the intricacies of how your party works, but I work very closely with people in the Libertarian Party on the anti-war issue. And I've been saying this in a lot of interviews because what I'm hoping with my campaign is, people have been asking me, well, how are you going to work in a bipartisan way? How are you going to get your policies through in a government with 434 other congressmen who are Democrats or Republicans? And my answer is, I have no intention of working with them. My complete intention is to get them all replaced. Because our government is just bought and paid for right now. Reading through the FEC rules, I can only take contributions from people, a maximum limit of $3,300 per individual. Right? So, that is a lot. That is very sizable. But as myself, I can use all the money I have, and fund as much as I want in the actual campaign, right? So if you look at somebody like Dan Goldman or Nancy Pelosi, these people make millions and millions of dollars using their insider stock trading, right? They don't really need donors, although they get them. This is what I'm starting my campaign with. This is like,
so you don't have Vivek
course.
Ramaswamy money to fund your campaign, I guess. Is
I
what
do
you're
not have the
No Donald Trump bank account. Yeah.
So my point in bringing that up is that the Congress is already an aristocracy because if you can afford to buy a seat, like if you could just pay to get in Congress, then you can. I don't know why my camera keeps going out. That's the FBI right there. It's got to be. But if you can afford to actually pay and buy your way into Congress, then yeah, the Congress is open for you. And so I have no no hope. I have no intention of playing this game of like, oh, let's get my bill passed, and if you vote for my bill, I'll vote
Mhm.
for your bill next. I'm not doing, and I'm not certainly not going to do that with these cretins and these corrupt people in government right now. But if somebody like Angela McArdle was a senator, a woman who I disagree with on economics completely, if she was a senator, I'd have no problem making any kind of deal or concession with her because you know what she's motivated by? And this is what makes me trust her so much. She's so clear on this. She says, what is the best course of action for government to make sure that my children can have a better future than I have right now?
Right.
Yeah, of course I'm going to trust that person to make decisions for me. You know, I'm going to disagree with her on a whole lot about what we should be doing, but I would rather argue with
Mhm.
her knowing she's honest and where she's coming from than arguing with a bag of money.
Right, or arguing
So,
with a
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham who's every day are advocating for war against Iran, doesn't have any children or legacy to leave behind. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
What's up, everyone? It's the Two Do Men, and we're here to tell you about a partner of ours, the Patriot Cigar Company.
The Patriot Cigar Company's story started with the idea of incorporating the love of cigars with the love for freedom and America. There's no better way to celebrate our love for our country and freedoms we cherish than smoking a premium cigar. After months of trying out different blends and working with master blenders, they created the Hellfire, TNT, Sidewinder, Moab, and Mark 48, which we have right here. Each cigar is made with premium tobacco, aged a minimum of 3 years in Nicaragua.
You know, this is a true story. I had really fallen off smoking cigars for a while, and I just couldn't find anything that I enjoyed or wanted to sit through until I was introduced to the Patriot Cigar Company. And these are honestly some of the best cigars I've smoked in a long time.
And the best part about it is you could go to mypatriotcigars.com and use our promo code DOOMED to get 15% off your order. So if you're ready to enjoy a nice cigar, head on over to their website by using the link in our episode description below.
Right.
Let's move on. Cap, let's go to one of your questions for Jose. Let's
All
talk
right,
about
so
you.
let's bring it back over here to the Bronx. Skaggs grew up there. My parents grew up there. My whole family grew up there. So I see like on your website you plan on helping rebuild the Bronx. What are some of your plans? Because I look at like Richie's page, it's what did I have here? Oh, he believes that supporting the Green New Deal will like help bring about changes in the Bronx. So like it doesn't even need to be about the Green New Deal, but what like it's a crime-ridden area. Like we know it's always had problems. What are some of your ideas to rebuild it?
Yeah. And thank you for asking me about policy. I'm hoping that we can have Vega for vote.vega.nyc 2.0 up by next week with a merch store and actual policy page. I put this together because I decided to. I was going back and forth as to whether or not I should run, honestly, for like the last few months, and then January came and I was like, okay, we got to do this. I'm gonna be on Jimmy Dore. Let's get something up right now. I don't care. Just one page so people can donate and volunteer, and then we can have a policy page in a week. Now, how am I actually going to rebuild the Bronx? Well, I have this idea of what's called the CCC. I'm going to say something here that's going to freak you out, being libertarians. FDR. All right. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of my favorite presidents. Again, I hope that doesn't scare you
It's
off.
okay. Make your point.
Fine.
Don't worry about us being
have-
libertarians. We're here to interview you, not go ramble on about what we believe in. Yeah.
The Civilian Conservation Corps was a program that was started to employ young men between the ages of, I think it was 18 to 25 or 26 or so. And a lot of these men were unemployed, unskilled, untrained. And so this was a government program that not only gave them the training, but then they had to use their skills to go and actually build national parks, build some basic infrastructure projects, build some basic quarries for mining and stuff. And some of these young men then went on to use the skills they learned. They started their own companies, they went to work for companies, and then they just started building things around the country. I would revitalize that program. The problem with the Green New Deal is that it's actually going to destroy your economy. Yeah, maybe in the short term, employing people to build, green energy may be profitable in the beginning, but the problem with green energy is that you lower your energy capacity because solar panels and windmills cannot compete with oil and gas or even better, nuclear. So what you would need is you would need to take the generation of people in the Bronx that are high school dropouts or delinquents or drug addicts or or they could also be college graduates, college laureates, any young person between the ages of 17 to 26 or 27, 28, 29. And you say to them, look, you have no skills. You're at best, maybe you're doing some kind of Uber Eats couriering. We have a problem in the country right now where our infrastructure sucks. We have our roads. I don't know if you guys drive here on the Northeast and the Bronx,
Like
especially the
driving
construction.
on the surface of the moon.
Yeah, right. It's rocky, right? Our subways suck, and who's going to rebuild this shit, right? New York City's budget is so overinflated that to build a subway line to only go 1 mile costed almost $1 billion or so. It's bullshit. You can train these kids, these young people, and say, look, for 2 years, we are going to pay you to get training. And when you're done, the way you're going to pay back your country is you're going to go and you're going to rebuild your roads. You're going to rebuild the hospitals, the schools, the housing units. You are going to be responsible for rebuilding your community. And then you can take those skills that you learned, whether it's welding, construction, engineer operating, and now you have skills that are marketable. Now you can go work for a private company. You could start your own company, and the government is going to say, listen, we got to do this in every goddamn city because the entire country's falling apart. So that's how you save a generation of people that are dying, people who are choosing the life of crime, and you give them training and you give them the ability to rebuild the Bronx. And what I see in that is that you give meaning to people's lives again. You give dignity because that guy who might build the road or a hospital or a school 20 years down the line can come back to it and say, I built that hospital and millions of babies were born since I built that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I was responsible, for those babies being born there. That's
Sure.
how I would rebuild the Bronx.
Very interesting. Do you think there'd be? I like the idea. I like the sentiment, and especially the humane aspect about it. Because as I've been moving through life, I've learned like there's a lot of number crunchers out there that take the humanity out of work. They just figure they could create an Excel spreadsheet and that will solve the problem. The only problem is it's a human behind it, not a machine. Do you think there would be any like major pushback from like the unions and the labor parties and stuff like that? Because they're going to be the ones bidding on fixing the roads and fixing the hospitals and the electricity that goes into the hospital. The local 3 is going to want to get a piece of, and this and that. How do you differentiate these projects?
Well, I find that trade unionists are very big supporters. Like when we're out in the streets, whether I'm out on a LaRouche table or with Diane Sayre's table or now just recently my table, you find that a lot of the trade unionists are very big supporters of this because there's going to be enough projects that there's going to be enough to go around and then some. Like if we do a national project where you like really look at the entire country and say, okay, let's actually look at why if you sit in LA traffic in Los Angeles why does it take 45 minutes to go 2 miles, right? Just sitting in that traffic, right? If you look at the fact that like, okay, why does the Midwest of our country, why is it all just vacant land? A lot of it is just farming land. It's undeveloped, right? And then you look at like, well, we haven't even built a city in what 50 years. I think the last city that we built was Reno or Las Vegas or something. So if you were to actually take a national plan and say, okay, well, you know what, let's modernize America. Like let's just bring it into the 21st century. I'm not even talking about doing advanced infrastructure. Just what does it take to actually bring the United States to the 21st century? It requires high-speed rail. It requires an increase in nuclear power plants, right? And who's actually going to build those things? Who has the training and the capabilities and the specialties to build those things? And at the size and at the scope that I'm talking about, I genuinely believe we don't have enough people to work on everything. So work will be abundant. Okay, work will be, people ain't going to have to outbid each other for anything. There's going to be enough for people to work on.
Okay,
In
fair
fact,
enough.
I'm saying we're gonna win. We're gonna do so much winning. You're gonna get tired of winning.
Yeah.
He actually had a similar plan. about something about cities or something like that. I just, again, without trying to bring too much of my libertarianism in, I caution the idea of government planned cities. I think of like Potemkin villages or something like that when start talking about things like that. But let me, because we're talking about like the city and you putting forward, like I prefer, of course, like a moral person in charge who would rather use our resources wisely and to help people, as opposed to using them for war and spending them foolishly on whatever other random thing. But let's transition to the situation in New York City with the migrant border crisis going on. There's a lot of migrants that
What's
have
the
been.
right answer?
What's that?
What's the right answer? And I'll say
Mhm.
it. You
So
tell me what you went up.
yeah, so
I'll
there's a
say
lot of
it.
migrants have been sent to New York City, and by Mayor Adams' own admission, it's like a tremendous drain on resources of the city because the city has finite resources. How would you? I want to get into the border crisis with you in general, but like, how would you see that impacting your ability to do this project if like the city's tied up with this resource strain from the migrants trying to help them as well?
Well, on the resource train, I mean, again, I'm going to freak you out. We need a national bank. We need a national bank. It's not a Federal Reserve. We need a national bank. That's the only thing it does is it issues credit so that we can then use that money to pay for these things. And the return on investment is not immediate, but over time, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it pays for itself. You don't get an immediate return on investment on, building a high-speed rail, right?
Or
Or even
bridge,
building
right?
a bridge.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Right. You don't get an immediate return on investment. But those are things you need for people to be productive. I mean, what kind of job opportunities would be opened up if I could get from New York to Philly or DC within an hour, right? And then be back home for dinner if you had high-speed rail. How does that actually revolutionize an economy? So bringing it to the migrant issue and I think you guys are familiar with the fact that Eric Adams just issued like $50
Hmm.
million from the
Mhm.
budget, right?
53 million. Yep.
$50,000. Yeah, right. Something like that to for the migrants. Look, I understand the sentiment. I know the situation a lot of these migrants are in. It is inhumane. It's not rosy. I've seen a lot of articles that say like, oh, well, they're living and yucking it up in hotels and five-star hotels. Like that is true, but they are stuffed in there, man. I mean, there's like 6, 7 people living in these hotel rooms. They're not getting food service, they're not getting guest services. It's just a room, honestly, for them. And a lot of the people that are coming in are being subjected to having to stay with other people who are criminals or are doing things that are illegal. Like, we're not properly vetting people as they're coming in, we're just taking them in. Look, I have a friend who works in one of these units that was built to take in immigrants here in New York City. And she says, like, I see women coming in here with scars from their husbands, beating them, and they don't want to report it. We have violent incidents happening every night. And she says, that she sees, like, she knows that some of the women are prostituting themselves in order to actually make ends meet. There's no productive jobs for the migrants. What they're doing is they're paying New York City citizens to give them their ID so they can become Uber Eats couriers. I mean, you know, it's not rosy for these immigrants at all. And and you are right. Yeah, the resource budget is tight, but take away the migrant issue, New York City was already fucked up. You can't
It's
live,
New York City. It's soaked in
right? So
blood top to bottom.
New York City was already fucked up. People are living paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes you can't even live paycheck. Like I made before, people are living, they need some form of government assistance just to survive out here. And then you throw in the migrants, you're only making the situation worse. I will say this, AOC had a point when she said we were taking in more immigrants in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Wait, we were taking in way more. She was right about that, but the difference was that was in New York City that was still being built. That was a New York City where people could come and get a productive
It was during
job,
the
similar to what
Industrial
I'm talking
Revolution.
And these immigrants wanted to assimilate and become American and work for
There
America
was
and build America.
yeah, there was a tremendous. I believe in the law of supply and demand. There was a tremendous demand because of the Industrial Revolution for shit to get built, and we needed a supply of humans to do that. So that it made sense at the time. But right now,
about.
like New York City is built. Can we fix it? Yes, of course. But like, we're not build. You know, this kind of goes back to what you were saying before. Like, you know, you want to build new cities. Maybe there could be something that, you know, they could slot into here. I think one of I don't want to give her, you know, I don't want to give her too much credit, but like, you know, I actually think the page accidentally libertarian shared it, but like she was making a point about how like let them just fucking work, like let them get jobs. They're like I think they're prevented from getting a job because of whatever scenario that they're in, even in New York. You're like, why do you need like a permit in a sense to work? That's not. You know, libertarians would say like you don't need a permit. You're free. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. If you voluntarily choose to get a job, you could do that job and you can enter into a contract with another person voluntarily. So I'd argue that might be a good avenue or something like that. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, what you said, we need a supply of human beings to go and build these things. Maybe I wouldn't use that kind of language, but yeah, I mean, that's similar to what I'm talking about. I mean, if you create a demand for there to be labor and you create such a big demand that like you're like, hey, actually, you know what? Maybe we will take some of you guys in so we can build this stuff in the next 10 years. You know, I'm okay with that, you know. I think that gives people dignity and that does root people's identity to the nation. You know, you said people were actually coming here who wanted to assimilate and be American. Well, I would argue with you, well, if somebody comes and they build a whole city, that is their identity.
Proud of the city, yeah.
It's like,
I agree
shit,
with that.
you know,
I agree with that.
I built that.
Yeah.
I built New York too, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, my grandpa, he came over from Italy and he was a like mason carpenter and he worked down in Manhattan. Yep. And he had a hand.
My grandfather built the subways.
He had a hand in a couple churches down there, and like you know, when I was working down there for a couple of years, I remember like, yeah, it was pretty fucking cool. My grandpa had a hand in like building this church back in the day, and if I ever pass by them now, it's yeah, you're like you're tied to it. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. You know, people who build shit in this country are real Americans. You know, so yeah, that's
all right. So you good? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, no. I mean, I wanted to just say another thing. It's like there needs to be a recognition of why there's such a big migrant crisis to begin with, because how many countries have we destabilized? How many countries have we couped? How many
the CIA done? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, you know, maybe we should like figure out like, well, like now there's this humanitarian act that we want to inflict on Nicaragua. We're going to sanction them unless they allow, and we're also going to sanction Venezuela again unless we allow some presidential candidate, unless they allow some presidential candidate to run in their country, which is kind of funny because they're trying to kick Trump out of this one. But, you know, so now you're going to have more sanctions in these countries. Aren't you going to see more Venezuelans and Nicaraguans coming up, right? Because they need a place to go. The country's going to go to crap. So
it's all part of the plan.
I sound like a broken record on the show, but my God, I've made that point a million times. The problem with Democrats and Republicans, even Trump and Democrats, is like Trump is all about like the border security, which I'm not saying is not important, but there's no talk about like stop destabilizing South America, or the perfect example of Libya. Regime change war with NATO, overthrew Gaddafi, destabilized the whole place. People don't want to die. People, you know, most people want to live with their family and have a good life. So if the fucking place is messed up because of a policy you did, they then leave and go somewhere else which is safer, and which is then turns around and spun like it's creating a problem which you're then looking to solve at the same time. So like my advice to you, man, is to be like, go around in the neighborhood, and like that's a goddamn libertarian point right there. Like, make that point of like anti-intervention, stop destabilizing regions. We can't even like fix this migrant problem if we're constantly going around the world and you know, regime changing people, which is happening right now all the time, literally. Like while there's going to be another you know, refugee crisis, you know, with all these wars that are popping up around the place.
Well, I don't see that as a libertarian point. I just see it as common sense. But, you know, paint it however. I mean, maybe the libertarians should put me on their line, you know?
No. We can work together on these things, man. Like I said, yeah, definitely.
Definitely can.
These areas of agreement, like good people that, you know, value them should work together 100%.
Unless you pay me money, in which case I'll sell out to whoever's cause.
Man, if you sell out, if you win, I was telling Chris before, if you win and then you sell out, I'm going to be your biggest enemy. I'm going to dedicate every episode to roasting you and pointing out how you've sold out.
I'm on the opposite side because honestly, like reading Richie Torres's fucking page, he's just towing the most general Democrat Party line. I'll toe the line if you're going to pay me 250 grand a year and I get to work 100 days a year. Fuck it. Like it's like, I mean, just reading his page was just nauseating to think like there's not an original thought or idea anywhere here. It's just strictly toe the line, toe the progressive line.
It is.
So with
yeah. Look, I mean,
go ahead.
can I show this real quick? I don't mean to go back to Israel, but his tweet a couple days ago about the aid package. He said, for the first time in history, Speaker of the House has taken a position that will not support aid to Israel unless there are conditions. It represents the first time in history that a House Speaker has all but endorsed conditioning aid to Israel. This is dangerous precedent that cannot be allowed to stand. When I ran for Congress, I made it crystal clear that I would oppose anything other than unconditional aid to Israel, whether that attempts at conditioning come from the far left or from the far right. The cheap, cynical game that Speaker Johnson is playing sets a dangerous precedent for conditioning emergency aid. It represents a dangerous politicizing of Israel in a time of war. Represents a dangerous decision to pursue division over unity and politics over principle. I mean, what a crazy thought or position. Like, you can't.
A New York
there's no conditions. We just give a country unlimited aid forever with no conditions and not without a second thought. They could be dropping nukes on us. They could be nuking us, and we have to still give them aid. Is that what you're saying, Richie Torres? My goodness.
I wish he would bring that energy to the Bronx. Like, the Speaker of the House today is denying the Bronx the money that it needs to fix the poverty and the illiteracy.
Well, you know what you do? You bring that energy. You bring that energy to the Bronx.
Okay.
So to keep jumping on Richie, I have my last question here for you because we're coming up on a full hour, I see. So what is your plans? I'm all policy. So what are your plans for reforming and lowering crime? Crime has always been an issue in the BX. And your opponent once again believes the Green New Deal will fix this along with stricter gun laws and quote unquote reimagination of the criminal justice system. We just had, the incident in the city with the migrants getting out bail free. If you're on a subway and some guy is attacking you and you defend yourself, you'll go to jail. Yeah. So, I mean, this needs to change. Crime is it's only going to get worse. You were just talking about your friend who, deals with the migrant housing and all the violent attacks that takes place there. What's some of your game plans?
Well, look, how do I start? There's different angles when it comes to the increase of crime in New York City and why it was increased. The biggest factor to it was in 1971. This was an offshoot of Nixon's plan called benign neglect, which was basically just let the poor people in the minority neighborhoods die off because they're already killing each other. We had a city planner. His name was Roger Starr. And Roger Starr's official New York City policy was something called planned shrinkage. His plan was, okay, look, you got the Bronx, you got Brownsville, Brooklyn, you've got parts in Queens, you got Harlem. It's all Black and Latino. They've got fires going on. What if we were to just accidentally cut 2/3 of their fire department away? Let's cut 2/3 of their firehouses. Let's cut 2/3 of the police. Yeah, let's cut 2/3 of teachers. Let's just see what happens. And this was the official policy called planned shrinkage, and it's been the city's official policy till today. Not kidding. Like, this is like the official, like, what people in the city administration have believed and continue to believe. And so when you have those kinds of conditions, of course you're going to have an increase in crime. You guys know Curtis Leewell, right?
Yes. Of course, yeah, he ran against
Curtis,
the Guardian Angels. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Say what you want about him. That guy, I mean, has some balls to come out here in the 70s when the shit was dangerous and start the Guardian Angels. He really did do something great for the city at a time when it needed it the most. The problem now is, well, honestly, it's cultural. People in the Bronx, people in the country, honestly. The entire country is befallen to the same spell of pessimism, right? This idea that, like, man, the country's going to shit. Government doesn't do anything for me. Going to college is a scam. There are no productive jobs. Fuck it. I'm going to live what I think is the American dream. I'm going to make all the money I can, right? I have to figure out what I can do best for me, what my kind of survival is, and I'm just not going to give a shit anymore. And that's what leads to crime. It's the fact that there is no national mission. There's no hope in this country anymore. People are not inspired. And so people just don't give a fuck anymore. There is no dignity in the society anymore. And you have to restore that dignity. Back during World War II, the country was completely united. And it wasn't even because of World War II. I mean, that was an indicator, right? When we were kicking the Nazis' ass. Yeah, sure. But why was FDR so popular even before 1941, before we entered World War II? Because he was able to pull the country out of a Great Depression through these national mega projects that inspired people. What if somebody in the Bronx woke up one day and was like, there's a new subway line, there's a cross Bronx train now? Right. So I don't have to sit on the fucking bus that's over. I was on the bus the other day and there was a homeless guy who got on it and just started taking a shit in the middle of the bus. I'm not kidding you.
I believe it.
Just,
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bronx Mule.
Yeah, believe me, I used to take the
it's-
I used to take the Pelham Parkway bus across the Bronx all the time, like to Fordham Road and all that, and it was fucking annoying how there is no train that goes across the Bronx. Like it's like all the trains go north and south down to Manhattan, and you're like zigzagging to get across. So yeah, there you go. Maybe you should run on something like that. We're gonna build a train so that we from
that is my
from west to
is
east.
my
Yeah.
Well, because Hewlett Jack, who was the borough president of Manhattan, the first black borough president of Manhattan, he demolished a lot of the trains along Manhattan that were above ground. And he put them underground. So one train today is now underground because of him. And then he had this plan of extending the C train, which goes up to Washington Heights and ends at 168th Street. He wanted to extend it underneath the George Washington Bridge into Teaneck, and so that it loops around in New Jersey down to Hoboken and then back into the city so that people don't have to drive into the city, right? I mean, this just makes complete sense, right? He was estimating like a reduction of traffic by 40% or 50% or so. But anyway, but this is related to solving the crime issue. Step one is to give people some goddamn hope and give people a reason to want to live and say, you know what? You're right. I want to be an American. I am proud to be an American today because I see things are being built. I see things are being done. And I see a government that actually values human life, right? This is why I believe things start from the top down. Why are there so many school shootings? Because the school shootings are a reflection of our foreign policy. That's just the truth, man. You know why I think there's been kind of like a slowing down in the shooting, at least, or maybe we're just not hearing about them. But the reason why you haven't had like a big one is because all the young people right now believe in something. They believe in this cause of stopping the genocide in Gaza. You have high schoolers walking out of school saying, you know what? My government is not going to fund the Israelis anymore. I'm not going to stand for that, right? These are people who can't vote. They're walking out of school. This is what happened in Chicago. They got a ceasefire resolution passed in Chicago. The high schoolers walked out of school, right? Now, that's one thing for people to believe in immediately right now. And that right there, you are organizing young minds to actually do something productive. Right. And now I'm saying, great. Now your energy doesn't have to be reactionary to there being a genocide. It could be used for something productive. Look, in your community right now, there are people dying of malnutrition, like in communities like in Detroit, Michigan. You can be responsible for getting hospitals built. You can be responsible for getting clean water there, because apparently in Michigan, there are still places like Flint that don't have clean water still, after this was like such a national crisis. It's like you can be the people who actually end it. You have to give people a purpose. That's what I'm saying. And things will straighten out immediately. Immediately, things will straighten out already if people actually have an idea that things can get better.
So you're it's interesting because you're saying it has to come from the top down, but what you're explaining is it coming from the bottom up. Even you, again, you're an example of it coming from the bottom up. You're just a normal person running for office to try and do something better. I like what you're saying. I saw a funny Babylon Bee headline the other day where it said Gaza passes a ceasefire resolution for Chicago, which is the inverse of what they did. I think that's great. I think the ceasefire movement and all that activism I need people to like harness that energy and put it in like to their own neighborhoods as well. I agree with like, I'm definitely on the same side of this probably as you are of this issue, but like what about your own neighborhood at the same time, right? Like it's great you're concerned about the people, the Palestinians. I am as well, but like where is your like urgency to solve the
Fix your
crime
own shit,
problem
yeah.
in Chicago, right? So just using that as an example. Sometimes again, I just look at things differently. I look at kind of like the decay of culture, coinciding with like the government growing to the largest it's ever been in history, human history. But it's only going to change if people get involved themselves and try and like make this difficult, long process of like clawing things back. And we need people to kind of like steer them in the right direction and motivate them and give them hope. So I think that is somewhere that you could definitely fit in your community. So I look at it again as a bottom up approach. But you do need leaders, of course. There's always going to be elites. There's always going to be leaders in society. So people need to rise to the challenge and lead people. Humans need to be led. They're not, for now at least, we're not like plugged into the matrix and all set in one direction. Soon with those Apple Vision Pro things, perhaps, but not yet. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen any of those yet, man. I seen over the weekend. Those are all popping up in the city.
Not interested in it, but I get it. Seems cool.
We've raised enough money where we can buy one Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
I don't know how I can write that off, justify it to the people who donated. Like
you might be able to. Yeah,
that concerns
Start
me.
a charity. You can write whatever you want off.
That concerns me. That's another level of just dissociation. That's gonna, people are gonna be experiencing now. Like you have fucking goggles on your head, and you're watching YouTube on the subway, like in the background.
I actually, no joke, was driving, and I'm on 95, and I see this car next to me, and he's got his phone in one of those little things that hold your phone on the dashboard, but it wasn't the GPS. It was he was streaming somebody play video games while he was driving. And I'm like, bro, like, dude, how bad is your attention span? Like, I have a bad one, but at least like when I'm driving, like I focus on driving. The last thing I'm doing is watching TV and driving at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. That freaks me out, actually. The fact that somebody could be watching TV and driving. And on the Cross Bronx, no way, man. It made me never want to drive again.
Well, the Cross Bronx, and it's, that should be a policy. Like, what are you going to do about that shit, man? The Cross Bronx.
I was going to say before, when you're talking about the bridge, man, I've sat on enough fucking traffic jams on George Washington Bridge.
Yeah. Can you can you vote to just eviscerate it? Like, I don't know.
The Cross, but Hewlin, coming back to Hewlin Jack, he was against the Cross Bronx being built. And Robert Moses was like, no, we need a Cross Bronx. Hewlin Jack's alternative was, okay, well, if it's got to be built, you got to build it underground. Because what the Cross Bronx did was it destroyed homes along that route.
Eminent domain, right?
Yeah, exactly. It could have been built as a tunnel underground or something. Ultimately, I think where the country kind of messed up was rather than having an international, I mean, you could have the international highway system, but there should have been something in conjunction with it, like a high-speed rail network system. Like, and we can still build that right now. That'll definitely solve a lot of congestion issues. People won't be driving as much. People will be taking the high-speed rail. Be quicker than driving too, and better than taking a plane, cheaper than taking a plane.
That's why we don't have them. And the airline industry starts to fall apart. The airline industry pulls big strings. They get bailed out all the time. Last thing they want is a high-speed rail.
Exactly. But I will I know we're coming up on a full hour here, so I'll end it off by talking about why I'm running. There's many reasons why I'm running. I think we went through them, but the Bronx is my home. I was born here. I was raised here. I have cried here. It's also one of the places that has been forgotten by the United States. It's just been forgotten. And it's a shame because there are many very good cultural references here. One of our founding fathers is buried here at St. Anne's Church. That's Gouverneur Morris. People don't even know this guy. This guy was the man who penned our Constitution and who wrote the words, "We the people of the United States." He wrote the entire preamble of our Constitution. That's the Bronx to me, man. The Bronx when people think about the Bronx, what do they think about? The poverty. They think about the violence. They think about the illiteracy, the immigrants that are here. They think only the negative things. I wasn't promising people a win or a vote, but I'm hoping that I can redefine what it means to be from the Bronx. If we can get the Bronx to be a center where people are saying, you know what, we want high-speed rail, or if it's a center for where people are saying we want an observatory here, or a center for where they're saying we want VOTEC schools, VOTEC high schools again in the Bronx. And then if people start associating the Bronx with it being like a science center or an advanced industrial research center where people are advocating for that, then I've done some good for my community. So that's why I'm running.
Right on. Right on. That sounds awesome.
I'm all for it, man. I moved out, but I still have a place in my heart for the Bronx.
But you're not going back.
No, I'm not going back. But I wanted to do good. It's still my home, my original home. And yeah, it is. Like you don't ever want like your hometown to fall apart and be like this destitute place. It has always been like historically too. You're right. Like it's been a forge of culture. It's an all-American city. Hip hop, the Yankees, all this stuff.
Yeah.
All these different cultures and all these different neighborhoods that live there. It's a fucking great place. And I am ecstatic and excited that like some people who live there are trying to do something about
putting up a fight.
Maybe we don't agree philosophically on politics. That's fine. I'm all for people just trying to do something. At least it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I'm going to need you to be my security guard.
You got it.
Yeah,
I'll come down there.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll keep us in the loop, and maybe if you do one of these,
I'd be happy to help any way I could.
Come down and do something. Yeah, we'll put something together for you.
Awesome.
All right, man. Skaggs, any final words?
That's it, man. Jose, tell everybody where they can find you again one more time.
Yeah, your Instagram, your website.
VoteVega.nyc, VoteVega.nyc. If here's how you can support my campaign. If you have to intervene. If you can't intervene, then you protest. If you can't protest, then you volunteer for my campaign. If you don't want to volunteer for my campaign, then you can donate. That's how you support my campaign. All right. Go out and do the things that people have seen me do. Go out and yell at a politician, a congressman, and tell them that you think what they are doing supporting the genocide is wrong. That's what you should do. That you should elect yourself to be the truth you want in your country and in your society. So.
All right.
Vote Vega.
Words. All right. Right on, man. All right. Thank you very much, Doom Nation. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for coming on. It was an awesome time. I hope you had a great time. Doom Nation, we'll be back again shortly. And peace out.